Hello everybody, welcome to High Holiday Happenings segment or video number 9. We are going to take a brief look at the Torah reading for the first day of Rosh Hashanah. The Torah readings on Rosh Hashanah reflect some of the recurring themes during this festival. The theme of the first day reading is remembering, how God remembers. God remembers Sarah, the first biblical matriarch, by blessing her with Isaac. Ironically, much of the reading does not focus on Isaac and the celebration of Isaac, but rather on his older half-brother Ishmael, as well as the family conflicts which ensue. To me, this reading presents some of the prototype conflicts and struggles that we often experience in our own lives. Ishmael is not Sarah's birth child, but rather the child of Hagar, Sarah's servant and surrogate mother. Sarah was incapable of giving birth at an earlier point, and so Hagar was her surrogate. When Sarah finally gives birth to a child, namely Isaac, she expresses an uncontrollable jealousy and rage over Ishmael's place in the family. Sarah and Abraham argue over what to do because Ishmael is really Abraham's child. Eventually, Ishmael and his mother Hagar are banished. And on the surface, and even beyond the surface, we can certainly, and justifiably so, argue that this banishment was cruel, and it certainly was painful, but perhaps not atypical for its day. God then remembers, the Torah refers to this, how God remembers and protects Ishmael and Hagar. And I think that theme suggests that maybe the primary target of God remembering here is not Isaac or Sarah, but rather the central objects of God's remembering are Hagar and Ishmael. That's a very interesting idea, that the portion begins by referring to God remembering Sarah, and it's reflective of that theme of remembering, but ultimately it's not Sarah God remembers, but Hagar and Ishmael. That's one way that we could read the story. But however we read the story, we can certainly say with validity that the story is not sanitized. It's not necessarily even a glorious moment in the life of Abraham and Sarah. So why on Rosh Hashanah, this great day, this new year, why are we reading this very, very difficult story, the story filled with a lot of conflicts, and the story which really does not highlight the very best of early Israelite tradition? And I think it is important that this story be the story that was chosen for the first day. If we are going to seriously undergo what we call cheshbon nefesh, if we are going to truly examine our own individual and our collective souls during this holiday season, we need to be consistent. We cannot speak about our own self-examination without recognizing that this self-examination was indicative of what needed to be done in the past. So by choosing a story which is filled with this kind of conflict, we recognize that the cheshbon nefesh, this examination of our own lives and our own souls, which we undertake on Rosh Hashanah, was also the same kind of cheshbon nefesh that was needed back then. We acknowledge that our early biblical matriarchs and patriarchs had to undergo this same kind of scrutiny in the past. One additional comment here. Part of what provoked Sarah was not just the presence of Ishmael, but the Torah speaks about Sarah witnessing Ishmael playing. Now, it might be an innocuous statement, Was it just Ishmael's mere presence which caused this great jealousy within Sarah and therefore provoked her to urge her husband in the strongest terms to banish him from the house? Or was there something a little bit more nefarious? And some have suggested that Ishmael's playing was not just a simple or polite or gentle playing, but rather he was playing abusively with his younger brother, and that was something that Sarah could not tolerate. Whatever the case, we feel for Hagar and Ishmael, and I believe so does God. Abraham and Sarah are not punished because the story has to elevate Isaac. Isaac has to be the center of attention because that is the only way that this family, their legacy, their genealogy, chronology will lead to the establishment of Am Yisrael, of the Jewish people. Yet, I think it is so important that we remember this story not as a sanitized version of our past, and that we remember this story as something which is open-ended. We don't have a concise conclusion, not in terms of the narrative, but in terms of how we feel about it. The story is left for us and our imagination to determine what we think. And maybe by reflecting upon this story and the conflicts faced in the past will lead us to reflect upon our own issues that we face in our own lives. So I leave all of this to your observations and your reflections. And just like some of the prayers, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur have its own special Torah reading melody. With that in mind, once again, Shana Tova.